Take Southport. In response to the brutal murder of three beautiful young girls aged 6, 7 and 9 last summer, the government covered up the terrorist elements of the case. The Labour government continues to shamefully deflect blame from the killer himself, the murderer himself, onto social media companies, internet platforms and Amazon, where the murderer bought his knife.
The MSM want me to talk about Rachel from Account's growth speech today, after completely destroying the British economy with historic high taxes driven by a socialist agenda. The idea that she can now turn things around, it's for the birds. But it is not just economic destruction facing Great Britain. Our entire way of life, our culture is being torn apart because of an imported ideology that doesn't believe in English values. An ideology that wants to see Sharia law sweep the United Kingdom. And the MSM just wants to pretend that none of this is happening, no matter how shocking these statistics about a population explosion that we can't handle, not to mention proof of overwhelming demographic change, Pakistani Muslim rape gangs being able to let loose, or even the type of sickening tragedy that was allowed to happen in Southport because the authorities overlooked the truth about Axel Rudakubana. So to hear a former United Kingdom Home Secretary, a senior Conservative politician with a real track record attempting to deal with the British deep state, to hear her tackle all of these issues, all within one major address at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., was far more significant to me. Now, in the legacy media, only the hard left Guardian bothered to go big on her speech at all. And of course, they did so with a heavy dose of negative spin. But in fact, Suella is painting a picture of a dystopian reality where within just 2 decades, the UK is led by an Islamist government that is an Iran-style enemy of the United States of America. Now, that is a prospect that should terrify anyone fighting to protect the West. Watch.
Key questions will emerge. Will this inspire citizens in other nations stuck in this political ideology of the far left to follow suit? More importantly, what will happen in the West if it does not? What will happen if democracy is indeed thwarted by the existing political class? Vice President J.D. Vance said at the National Conservative Conference, at which I also spoke in the summer here in DC, that the UK was going to be the first Islamist nation with nuclear weapons. I don't think he was entirely joking. Is it an impossibility that 20 years from now, it will be the UK, not China or Russia, that will emerge as the greatest strategic threat to the USA? Born out of a broken relationship and weak leadership. What happens if the UK falls into the hands of Muslim fundamentalism, our legal system gets substituted by Sharia law, and our nuclear capabilities vest in a regime not dissimilar to that of Iran today?
What if? And it is about time, especially with the sectarian politics entering the UK politics, it is about time we start acknowledging that prospect and look at how we stop it from happening. But instead, this uber-woke government does all it can to cover up the reality of extreme Islam. So unlike most other politicians, Suella doesn't shy away from linking what's going on directly to the Southport Massacre.
There has been an unwritten code in our country. Talk about the rape gangs and you will be called Islamophobic. I'm glad that many more have found the courage to voice their anger today. Thank you, Elon. Or take Southport. In response to the brutal murder of three beautiful young girls aged 6, 7 and 9 last summer, the government covered up the terrorist elements of the case. The Labour government continues to shamefully deflect blame from the killer himself, the murderer himself, onto social media companies, internet platforms and Amazon, where the murderer bought his knife. So in the name of multiculturalism, politicians of the three main parties have consistently refused to address the elephant in the room, that millions of people coming into the UK do not have our best interests at heart and refuse to assimilate. Too many immigrants into the UK refuse to learn English.
Now, so many of these problems are caused by unrelenting mass immigration. As Matt Goodwin wrote on Substack today, by the time a 5-year-old today turns just 1 year of age, 1 in every 3 people on these islands will have been born somewhere else. While net migration will add another 10 million or so people to the country by the late 2040s. Meanwhile, around 5 million people, including lots of Brits, will simply leave these islands, perhaps for good. Astonishingly, or maybe not so astonishingly given how rapidly Britain is now declining, one recent survey suggests close to 1 in 4 Brits, including more than 1 in 3 young Brits, would like to leave the country if they could. And Suella had more important truth bombs relating to this to drop.
Yet as a classified incident by the Labour government, which is incomprehensible. And
it is. So there were several charges put to the defendant. He pleaded guilty to all of them. Some of those charges were terrorist offences. He was found to have been looking at extremist, Islamist material online. He was making, explosives. And the authorities and the government have so far still refused to describe the whole incident and the murder as terrorist motivated or terrorist in any way. That does a disservice to the victims and the community of Southport and to the British people. This murderer was an Islamist extremist. And he carried out the most heinous of crimes in a way that was wholly unjustified and motivated by hatred. And, to somehow diminish it, I think, is wrong.
It's absolutely outrageous.
It really is. And the fact the MSM looks away from these scandals is a disgrace. It's the reason organisations like Sly News are suffering a long and painful death. Take the way they have virtually ignored this story today, which could have huge ramifications as to why the Pakistani Muslim rape gang scandal was covered up. So this report reads, 2 former South Yorkshire police officers have been arrested over complaints from 4 victims of child exploitation in Rotherham. And the arrests are revolting in terms of what is alleged, at least attempted rape, indecent assault. But the critical question here, and obviously I await justice to take its course in these cases, but the critical question here is, what hope do we have when the establishment, the mainstream media, the police and the judiciary seem to so often work together to stop talking about the true horror of Britain's immediate future? Now it's time for The Outsider. Father Calvin Robinson joins me now live. So, Father Calvin, it's no surprise that the mainstream media virtually ignored this speech from Suella Braverman, given she's saying the unsayable. She's saying if we continue at this pace, it is possible there could be an Islamist government of Great Britain within 2 decades, an Islamist government that would potentially want to introduce Sharia law.
Well, indeed. We're already seeing the fruits of that. We're already seeing Sharia law all up and down the country. I think there are 80 Sharia courts predicted by our own government. So there's probably more than that in reality. So it's already happening, and she's right to call it out. But the shock and the horror from the legacy media when she does call it out is interesting, isn't it? It's almost like they don't want to acknowledge what's going on. I think her speech was fantastic. Suella was able to say things that you and I have been saying for a long time. We call them the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs. They're not grooming gangs. They are raping young girls, unfortunately. It's a grave evil. Call it as it is. She used the same term. And that's quite a significant step, because all of our politicians up until now have been saying the grooming gangs, they water things down in order to play nice with the lefty legacy media. But we don't need people to do that. We need people to speak the truth, call a spade, address the problem head on, and try and come up with solutions. We can't have solutions if we can't even identify the issue. And Suella Braverman seems to be doing that.
Well, of course, because I want to take a look at another way that she actually linked what was going on in Southport and directly actually accuses, and this is very significant, Calvin, directly accuses the government of a cover-up. First, though, hot flashes, sleepless nights, weight gain, joint pain. I know a lot of you are dealing with or have dealt with these symptoms, especially the women in the Outspoken family. Now, obviously, I haven't experienced menopause firsthand. That is scientifically impossible. But I know from you about the challenges that you face. But I've got good news today. By now, most of you have heard me talk about Verso. I've been taking their products for months and it's been absolutely transformative for me. But today I want to focus on all of you amazing women out there, especially those dealing with menopause or perimenopause. Celbene by Verso is designed to target those symptoms head on by addressing the root cause. It's formulated with ingredients that are proven to increase NAD+ levels. And boosting NAD+ can make a big difference in how you feel. Women who've used it have seen hot flashes disappear, more energy, joint pain relief, weight loss, and mental clarity. Some listeners have even told me their periods have come back or have become regulated and they feel like they've turned back the clock on aging. The ingredients in Celbene have shown to balance hormones without going the traditional hormone therapy route. It also helps with inflammation and metabolism, which is especially helpful for managing weight and keeping you feeling your best. What I love about Celbene is it doesn't just mask the symptoms of menopause, it tackles the root causes of aging. So if you haven't tried it yet and you're ready to take control of your health and feel more like yourself, you can just click in the description on YouTube or Rumble or head on over to buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code outspoken at checkout to save 15% on your first order. So if you're sick of those sleepless nights, the hot flashes, or just feeling off, give Celbene a try. I'm going to repeat the address now, buy.ver.so/outspoken and use the coupon code outspoken. But now, back to the show.
We have leaders who will focus on covering up the truth about the terrorist aspects, the extremist elements of the murder of 3 young girls in Southport, and arresting those people who are angry about that cover-up, then looking at the truth, looking at why Islamist extremism has been allowed to take root in many communities in the United Kingdom. The UK is now a country where anti-Semitism has become normalised on our campuses, through our mainstream media, and on our streets through the hate marches, which are enabled by the authorities rather than policed against. And we have an economic weakness that has permeated into our nation's fabric, grown into every facet of our lives, so that now the number of people in the UK and indeed the West who are sick, both physically and psychologically, is beyond comprehension.
And Father Calvin, I think what she did very well there was link all of these issues together because they are connected. Of course, the Southport cover-up is connected.
Yes, every single bit of it is connected. I think it's very brave of her to do so. As you pointed out a moment ago, just over the last few hours, we've heard the news that a couple of police officers have now been arrested with links to the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs. All of these things are coming out, which shows that from the police all the way up to the House of Lords. Don't forget there was a peer that was arrested for connections to this. It's all insidious within a certain demographic community, and unless people start to point it out, we won't get to it. Where I disagree with Suella is when she says this is Islamist extremism. No, this is just Islam. This is the fruits of Islam, unfortunately. We need to get past the stage of saying it's just on the extremities. This is what happens in a particular community, part of a particular hostile faith that is toxic and countercultural to our own culture. And so we have to say no. Just today, there's been another video out, Christian Concern tweeted it, of these Mohammedans on Westminster Bridge, right outside the Houses of Parliament, topless, hammering themselves in the chest, a display of dominance in the heart of our capital city. And it continues, not just the extremists, but the Islamists, the Mohammedans, who are showing that this is their land now. They are conquering us right under our noses. And so few people are willing to speak out against it.
I know, which is the most shocking thing in my books. Now, I think it really is worth looking at these numbers, Calvin, because obviously these numbers matter. Demographics matter here. So Matt Goodwin has done a very good job on Substack of crunching them today. And he writes, by the year 2032, just 7 years from now, Britain's population will explode by another 5 million people, equivalent to more than 4 cities like the size of Birmingham. By the year 2047, just 22 years from now, which really isn't a long time at all, our population will explode by 9 million people, equivalent to another London. What this means, unless we change direction, is our population will now surge from 67 million people in the early 2020s to nearly 73 million by the early 2030s, and then again to nearly 80 million by the late 2040s, representing an astonishing population growth rate of over 13%. And of course, Calvin, most of the growth will be in the Islam population. And of course, you are right to point out, Gad Saad also agrees, there is no extreme Islam in his book. Islam is Islam. And this type of growth rate, he believes, is the West's suicidal empathy.
It's quite interesting. People think this is about hatred or Islamophobia or racism. They can't get past that, and they need to get past that. What people need to do is look at the numbers. Matt Goodwin's great at numbers. Just read his numbers. There's no hatred there. There's no ideology there. It's just statistics. So people need to look at these statistics and say, okay, this country is going to become predominantly Islamic in no time at all. Is that what I want for my country? Christianity is already in a minority in the country, and it's falling at the wayside as Islam grows. So it's just common sense, it's statistical truth that in the very near future, the United Kingdom will be predominantly Islamic. Is that what you want for your country? That's the question we need to ask the liberals and the people who are afraid of having the conversation for being seen as racist, Islamophobic, xenophobic, and all of the phobics and isms. We've got to move past it. We've got to have the conversation in the open.
Indeed, and that footage that you pointed out, Calvin, a lot of people, when they see that, will be thinking this isn't what we want. This isn't the United Kingdom that we love. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.